Welcome to the next episode of Beyond the Spectrum, which is our family's journey with autism. Yesterday, I had alluded to the fact that though we needed to overcome tons and tons of hurdles, the first ones were the closest ones, the ones that were actually inside of our home. And I'm not sure if the listeners here know this, but families that are dealing with children with autism, I believe the divorce rate is around 75%. And just in general, couples that have any kind of disability that they're dealing with in their home, the divorce rate jumps up to almost 87%. And the reason I can't speak generally to this, because I can't speak for every couple, but I can say for us, it wasn't because we loved any less. Marriage is just hard enough as it is. You have so many things that you're dealing with in the beginning and throughout. And when you take on a whole new challenge, it just breaks you down in ways that you weren't prepared for when you decided to intertwine your life with your spouse's. Sure, you're thinking about the compromises that you're going to have to make, but usually that's just a compromise as an individual. And you're thinking about children and the way that you'll parent and the differences there, but you're not thinking of now you have this life that you're responsible for that needs a lot more attention and a lot more agreement than the normal parenting kind of life. And this is my opinion. I'm sure other people have different opinions. This is my opinion. This is our journey that we're sharing. Everybody really needs to be on the same page. There doesn't have to be agreement across the board, but everywhere that you do agree makes it that much easier. And I remember that when we were in training, when we had finally gotten the diagnosis, which I will get into that later, but when we were in training, they were telling us that it really is going to attack our marriage and our family life, and that it's going to be a big struggle that we weren't necessarily prepared for. And they said there's a stark difference in the way that females and males approach special needs, specifically for us, approach autism. This is what they said, that moms tend to embrace it quickly because the way that we look at things is we look at, okay, here's a situation. Here's what I'm dealing with. Now, how do I get to the solution? How do I help my family get through this? Dads have that same feeling. They still want their family to get through this. But what I was told, because I know that some men are going to say, that's not how I would have dealt with it. I'm just telling you what I was told, is that men have this kind of, initially, they deal with some sort of guilt. As far as their genetics, they're responsible in some way for passing this gene down to their child. Now, as people, we can look at that and say they get half of their genetics from their mom and half from their father. Why would the father take all of that on? I don't know why, but they do. They tend to kind of feel this guilt, and their initial knee-jerk reaction in protecting, I believe that this comes from a heart of protection, in protecting their family, is to disavow, to say this isn't happening with us. It's not real. We're blowing it out of proportion. He's just shy. That's normal for kids. So it's not that they want to sweep it under the rug, but it's almost as if they feel like if they don't acknowledge it, then it'll be easier to handle. Whereas moms, and I will speak from my point of view, and that is how my husband felt. So back to us, that is exactly how my husband felt. He felt very much in denial of it. And though he never spoke the words, oh, I think I've passed this on genetically, that came from the therapy sessions and stuff like that with our son and the training. Though he never spoke those words, I could kind of see how that might be. And he just loved this little boy so much that he just wanted to wish it away. So it's not, if you're a mom and you're listening to this and you're trying to understand why your husband will not just embrace this so that you guys can move on together to solve it, try to understand it from his point of view first. Try to connect with him first and understand that where he's coming from is he just wants it to go away. He wishes that it wasn't there, and that if you just treat him like a normal child, and I'm going to talk about that word, normal, then everything will be okay. So try to come alongside him and help him to see what I had to help my husband see, which is this, how I felt as a mom. Denying it is not going to get us anywhere. We need to see Micah for who he is. We need to understand the way he sees, what he feels, how he views the world. We need to come alongside him, and denying this is only going to put us behind. It's going to make us fall back. It's going to hurt him, and we love him. We want what's best. Acknowledging this doesn't make it any more real than denying it could make it any less real. It's real. It's here. And now we have to hold hands, and we have to hold Micah's hand, and we have to come alongside him and around him as a family, and we have to help him through this. And the only way that we can get there is by doing this together. He still didn't believe fully, but the more that I continued to gently point out to him, you see that? You see what he's doing? You see what he's saying there? You see how he's grunting? You see how he's, all of these things. Do you see how he's not playing with the toys? He's slamming them. Do you see how he likes to push himself into the wall because he likes that feeling, that impact on him? Do you see how he's kind of spacing out there? He's not really listening. Do you see, all these things? To just continue to point it out, because in my experience, again, this is not a male-female thing, okay? But in my experience, moms tend to be the ones that catch these things. They're watching, they're a little bit more observant, and they're watching for the warning signs, because they're always on alert to see what's wrong, can I help? That kind of mentality, where dads kind of rely on moms to do that. Interesting that when the moms say this is wrong, then they push back, but there you have it. And also, he didn't resist as much. I think because we didn't fight. There were times when we did fight. There were times when we were angry because he refused to see it, and I was getting so angry that he was refusing to see it. And I did feel there were times when I thought we weren't going to make it, because I did not want to let anything get in the way for my son's, advancement. Finally, he said, "You want to get him tested? Go ahead, get him tested then. We'll get him tested. We'll see." And when he saw the diagnosis and when he heard what the therapists were saying, I think he knew at that point that it was true, but he needed to hear that. And then I think we could all take a breath, a collective sigh. And then it became about us being a team, all of us together, battling this from the same place. And it made all the difference. And that wasn't just our immediate family. You could see that same male-female distinction throughout my family, with my brother and sister, with my father and mother. It kind of rippled out where you could see they obviously didn't have as much of an effect on our day-to-day, experience. But when all of a sudden it hit them, it made it so much easier to have just that support system be on board. And I'll share this one final example for my dad. And I say this because I think it can help others, especially grandparents, because I think they see it from a different perspective. I remember when my mom was, as I shared earlier, one of the first ones to see what was happening with Micah, like me. And we had been talking about it earlier, and I'm sure she had been talking about it with my dad. But again, that male thing, he kept saying, there's nothing wrong. He's fine. It's just, it was the typical response that, my husband had, and, and that we were told is very common in males. And so with my dad, it wasn't so much of an issue for us to kind of have him on board because he wasn't in our household. But I remember it was probably a year later after Mike had been in therapies and all of that. And he was playing with Micah, teasing him about something. It was kind of like which hand is it in, or something like that. Micah was young, probably 2.5 years old, maybe 3. And it was my sister and myself and my dad and Micah. And Micah chose the right thing. And my dad looked at us in almost this relief. And he goes, "Oh, he's smart." But it wasn't like he was so shocked. It was this like declaration. It was this declaration of he's going to be okay. And my sister and I both laughed because we saw exactly. We looked at each other and laughed and said, "Of course he's smart." But we both knew at that same time, everyone there saw exactly what happened. For my dad, it was that moment of, it's going to be okay. He's going to be okay. He's not incapable of learning. He's not incapable of growing. He's going to be okay. And it was just this beautiful moment. So look for those moments with your family where you don't have to be scared, but you do have to see things from each other's perspective. Don't see this as a conflict. See this as an opportunity for you to connect, hold hands, try really hard to understand from their perspective, because you have a whole journey of trying to see the world through your child's perspective. And if you can't see it from a spouse or a sister or a parent, oh boy, it's going to be even harder for you to see it through your child's eyes. So start using that as kind of the training grounds for you to start opening your mind, expanding the way that you view things, trying to stretch your perspective, be patient, be understanding, be willing. And I think that you're going to be setting yourself up for a lot more successes than if you go in with a total battle mentality. You have a battle ahead of you. You need as many allies as possible. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about after we got the diagnosis and all that we experienced there. So I will see you then.